I'm going to show you another best game prize from the ACO tournament held in Crete in October. These ACO events are great fun. They combine a chess tournament with a holiday. They're held in 5-star hotels. Conditions are wonderful. You know, there's a beach there are swimming pools. Food is great. I really recommend these tournaments. I'm in attendance, doing post-game analysis, giving lectures, giving a simultaneous display, and sharing a beer at the bar afterwards. And they are just great fun. And the next one is on the Greek island of Kos in May. Do check out the details. There are 2 tournaments. There's an over 65s and there's an Amateur World Championship, ACO World Championship. So do check out the links. And if you book before the end of November, you get an early bird discount. Okay, let's have a look at this game. So the 3 Grandmasters there, we all chose a best game. And this one was chosen by Spiridon Skembris, Greek Grandmaster. And it's between André Fortagne and Hartmut Hehn, both from Germany. And it starts out as a Benoni. And white picks, I think, a very nice system against the Benoni. If you're looking for something that gives a fair bit of control without too much, very sharp analysis, then this is quite a good choice. So the bishop comes to f4, excellent square, looking at that's perennially the weak pawn in black's position. The question is, how do you get at it? a6 prevents a piece coming to b5, and a4, of course, shuts down b5. Bishop g7. Now, there are some lines involving e4, but here's the twist. White plays h3. So that gives the bishop a bolt hole on h2 if it's ever pushed by the knight. And then instead of e4, white plays e3. So this is super solid. There is never any danger of this pawn becoming weak on e4 because it stays on e3. And now black's problem is, well, how do you bring this knight into play? Of course, if the knight comes here, this gets taken. So queen e7. And now the normal move here is bishop e2. Because sometimes the knight is going to come to h5 and then f5. And it's useful to have the bishop lined up against that knight. And as I said, I think this is a very respectable system. White will play the standard maneuver of putting the knight on c4 and press on the queen side. And white can get some positional pressure here without too much danger on the king side. But here white played bishop d3. I think that's inaccurate. Bishop is simply better on e2 in this particular variation. And here I think it's best if black just goes for it with knight h5 and then plays knight e5, and just to swap some pieces off. You notice with the bishop on e2, this wouldn't be possible. Because, in positions like this, I think black is pretty comfortable here. There is a little bit of pressure here potentially. You might be able to advance on the king side. That's why the bishop needs to be on e2. But black played b6. I think it's not necessary, basically, to play like that. Rook e1. Yeah, well, we could get a build-up and later on play the pawn up here, but sometimes it just gives the bishop an escape square on f1 to support the pawns here. And now black goes for it with knight h5 and then knight e5. And I think, this is a reasonable way of freeing the position for black. And white now plays bishop takes knight. And I would anticipate here bishop takes and knight takes and queen takes. And it's similar to the other variation. I think it's a balanced position. But black played pawn takes. And now we have a very interesting middle game on our hands. So, player of the black pieces, Hartmut Hehn, obviously decided he wanted to keep his dark-squared bishop. Very understandable. That dark-squared bishop is unopposed, and if it gets into the game, if it finds a good diagonal, it can win you the game. The problem is what happens if that bishop gets blocked out, but also white now has potentially dangerous passed pawn. So this is a very double-edged decision, but it shows real ambition from black. And here I think, well, I mean, white played e4. It's not a bad move. I would also consider playing knight d2 to put the knight on c4 and then push with d6. That looks like a reasonable way of playing to me. But e4 played, well, that means that white doesn't have to think about black pushing with e4 because the e5 pawn is solidly blockaded. And here I think with black, yeah, rook d8 and just go for it on the king side. Knight f4. But bishop d7 played. Bishop f1. Knight f4. In fact, with the bishop on f1, there's not a huge amount of danger with that knight. King h2. And the knight gets expelled. And round about here, I think I would feel very comfortable with white. I think a good move is bishop c4 with the potential to push on. And then queen e2. Now this is a key idea because that pawn is vulnerable. And if it advances, then white conquers these light squares. You can see once the bishop is exchanged, then this knight can come in. This knight may be able to switch around to c4. And, well, no doubt d6 will come. I think white is has a beautiful position there. So bishop c4 looks like a good move. But b3 played. Well, it's also not bad. It does prevent black from playing c4. Knight comes back to f6. Again, I think I would look at d6 and bishop c4. Knight d2 played. Knight e8. So that knight has found somewhere to go to. A good blockading square. I still think white has the better chances here. Queen f3 I think is a good move to take away that square from the queen. And once the knight blockades, then if these knights are exchanged, again I think white is doing pretty well with this simple idea of attacking the pawn on a6. But white misjudged it. It looks so tempting to play the knight c4, attacking the pawn, looking to play d6. But queen f6 covers the b pawn, threatens that pawn, and now rook a2. White believes black and defends the pawn, but now b5 comes. And this is getting very tricky. So the knight has to push back. Black has this, typical queenside pawn majority that you get in the Benoni. And once that starts rolling, then things start to happen. The knight goes back and knight d6. So black has achieved the dream blockading position. And this is already very unpleasant for white. Look at that beautiful queenside pawn majority. f3. That one kind of makes me wince because now these dark squares are even weaker. I think white should play bishop d3 here. And then maybe queen e2. But after f3, oof, that looks unpleasant. h5, excellent move. I really like how black is combining play on two wings here. So this is a very healthy majority. But instead of pushing it straight away, and maybe it gets stymied, gets blockaded, well, let's just hold those pawns on the queen side and just press on the other side of the board. Now here, I think that pawn has to be blockaded. But even so, the bishop comes to h6. That's a beautiful diagonal. And then maybe we'll put the king in the corner and go g5 and try to attack the king. Also very interesting. But instead, white played a5 and now h4. Ooh, that softens up these dark squares. And now the bishop comes in. This is looking so unpleasant for white now. You can see that decision ages ago to exchange off the dark square bishop, well, it might have been okay if white could somehow push through in the middle and conquer those light squares on the king side. But here you can see it's gone horribly wrong. And black is now in control on both sides of the board. That was exchanged off, but now the queen takes its place. And finally, black decides, okay, time to push on the queen side, b4. This is a really difficult position for white. The knight just doesn't have a good square to go to. Knight a4. Of course, before the knight hops in here, that gets hacked off. Now the queen invades on the dark squares. Now, black could have pushed on and just created, just a pass pawn on the queen side, but doesn't rush it. This is interesting. I mean, I guess after c4, it's not completely clear. I mean, I think black is probably doing very well. Looks fantastic actually, and the knight will come in. But instead, knight b5. Black is taking no chances at all. Let's just invade with that knight first. There are two beautiful squares. I mean, d4 is really the square to go to. And then let's squeeze again. Let's create a pass pawn after that. So, I mean, I really like the way black does this. It's very controlled, and there's an appreciation that black's position can only get better here. There's no need to push it too quickly. Rook b8, very controlled, very measured. Just getting behind that b pawn. Queen d3. Queen pops back to f4, just keeping an eye on that rook so the queen doesn't take. Rook comes back. Rook b5. Just blocking the queen out. Having a look at that pawn. Rook a2. And now the queen comes back. So black is enjoying himself. He can decide when to break open the position. Queen d8. Okay, he's having a look at that a pawn. White defends. Black's queen comes back. Yeah, why not? You can just massage the position here. You can take your time. This bishop is so bad, and these dark squares so weak. It's just got to be a winning position. The only question is, how do you break through? It's not if you can break through. Black always has this option going. Whether you sack the pawn or just whether here, actually it's just an exchange. So we've got the breakthrough, and the rooks are going to invade, and the pawn can be pushed. b3. Rook takes and pawn takes. So that pawn is just one step away from queening, and the rook invades as well. White decides, okay, doesn't want to just defend passively. He knows he'll lose. He goes for a counter-attack. But black, he's not bothered. Rook b3. If queen f8 check, actually the king is completely safe here. Indeed, if it keeps getting checked, it can just wander up the board. Totally safe. And then at the other end, black will break through. It just shows, you know, the weakness of those dark squares, and white can't do anything. There's just no attack there. So rook b3 played, queen takes pawn, and now black breaks through on the other side of the board finally. I love the way that black is switching back and forth between the two sides. Of course, if queen takes, then there's a discovered check to win the queen. I mean, probably this is what white should do, actually, and try to make the best of this position, but I have no doubt that black is winning here. Because, you know, these dark squares are just too weak. You know, queen in, and you invade. Whip off another pawn. But rook c1, yeah, and now it really is absolutely fatal. Queen invades, looks at the rook. Rook d1, and final move, queen e3 check. And here white resigned, of course, if king f1, knight h2 mate. Beautiful positional victory from Hehn, who was playing in the C group. Players in this tournament are grouped according to rating. That's the nice thing. So you're always getting, you know, a decent game. Someone of about your level. That's the ACO system. Yeah, really nice game. But I think, you know, after this exchange, this is where strategically it gets very interesting. White should be better, but didn't find the right moment to play through the middle and play on the queen side. And then once it got to this position, then black was in complete control, and I think played it very nicely, switching back and forth between king side and queen side. So I just repeat, do check out the links to the ACO tournaments. Next ones are in May on the Greek island of Kos. It's absolutely beautiful, beautiful time of year to visit. Wonderful hotel, combines chess and vacation. Do check out the links below. Book before the end of November to get an early bird price. Thanks for watching.